The AR-15 is one of the world's most fastest-selling guns, and Americans buy almost 500,000 AR-15s a year, which generates $500 million in revenue, according to an article written by Andrew Moultrie for Gunshot.com. The weapon has gone from barely making it into the military's hands to being one of the most copied weapons in the world today. Today we're going to talk about what has Americans in such a frenzy in buying all these guns. I'm going to show you today an example of an AR-15, parts of the AR-15, characteristics of the rifle, and the history. Now let's get started by talking about the history of the AR-15. The AR-15, or the military version of the M16, was developed for the military after Project Salvo concluded that two-thirds of men did not fire the weapon during World War II. Project Salvo also learned that men would be more apt to firing their weapon in combat if they had a lighter weapon and a weapon that fired at a faster rate of fire, which allowed them to gain fire superiority. And this was written by Marshall for the New York Post. So began the effort of the Army to get a new weapon which would help their men gain fire superiority. The first model developed was the AR-10. It was designed by a man named Eugene Stoner, and it was chambered in 7.62, or 308. It was later rejected by the Army after poor care for the weapon, and a round exploded in the chamber. Armalite went back to the drawing board and developed a new weapon, the AR-15, which was chambered in 223 or 5.56. The Army later rejected this weapon as well, due to the fact that the soldiers didn't properly care for it and another round exploded in the barrel. Eugene Stoner and the Armalite Corporation later sold the AR-15 design to the Colt Corporation for $75,000. Colt took the AR-15 back to the drawing board, then remarketed it and sold it to the Army, which accepted it in 1962. In 1963, the Army placed its first order for the AR-15, or M16, which they designated it, and they ordered 85,000 M16s. The Air Force followed close behind and ordered 19,000 AR-15s, thus setting forth one of the largest gun crazes in America. Today you can get the gun in almost any configuration that you want. You can attach lasers, flashlights, holographic sights, scopes, suppressors to these weapons. These weapons have truly gone from nothing to one of the greatest weapons that have ever been designed. Now that we have talked about the history of the weapon, let's move on and talk about some of the characteristics of the weapon. First, I'm going to start off by telling you that this gun weighs between 5.5 pounds and 8.5 pounds, depending on what kind of attachments that you put on it, as well as the length of the barrel, since the barrel is the heaviest part of the weapon. In a segment posted by the Encyclopedia Britannica, it has a rate of fire of 800 rounds per minute. That is, if you were to hold the trigger down and fire round after round for an entire minute, you'd be able to shoot 800 rounds. It has an effective range of 400 to 600 meters, but that's dependent upon the barrel size and the shooter's skills as well. Not everybody can just go out and hit targets at 600 meters. And it also has a muzzle velocity of 2,300 feet per second. It has an adjustable front and rear sight, which allows the shooter to adjust the impact of the round in order to make the weapon more accurate or yourself more accurate in firing. And these adjustable sights aren't fixed like a pistol at all. The weapon is gas operated. It uses the blowback method. What that means, as the round goes down the chamber, gas is fed into the gas tube, which forces the bolt back and recocks the weapon, and then when the bolt's moving forward, the bolt pushes another round in the chamber, which allows it to fire on semi-automatic. It was originally designed for 5.56, but nowadays you can get this weapon configured anywhere from 22 caliber all the way to 50 cal. So you really have a lot of options out there in what size round you want to shoot from this weapon. Now that we have talked about the history and some specifications, let's take a look at the weapon, and I'm going to show you some parts of it. First, this is the bolt, the most important piece of the weapon. Uh, and you have your gas key. This is where the gas is fed into the bolt, which pushes the bolt back, and then the bolt comes forward and chambers another round, which allows it to be fired semi-automatically. Then you have the weapon system yourself. Starting from the rear, you have your buttstock. On this one, it's adjustable, so I can adjust the length of the buttstock for my preference. Then we have our holographic sight. We have our ejection port. We have our trigger housing and our trigger. Then we have our magazine well. This is where the rounds are fed with the magazine up into the weapon. We have our rail system and hand guards. And then we have our bipod legs. This is called the A-frame and also houses the front sight. And then finally, we have the barrel. And on the end of the barrel is a compensator. Since we have talked about the AR-15's history, some specifications for the weapon, and we also look at the weapon itself, let's review some of the main points that we've covered today. Today we have taken a look at how one of the greatest military weapons almost never made it, and its transformation into being one of the most popular guns sold on the market today. We have also talked about how the AR-15 was developed by a man named Eugene Stoner in the Armalite Corporation, some specifications of the weapon, and the weight and velocity, as well as some size rounds that you can get this weapon in. I hope that this speech has been informative and you have learned something interesting today. Thank you.